We are Seraphim.
I think everyone thinks that we're just taking people to the moon. The economics of getting into space has drastically changed within these 5 years that I've been doing this. Space is visual, but we didn't have native imagery. Like now we actually have native imagery. You know, you've got this satellite imagery of rivers and lakes, and it's absolutely stunning imagery. You would have it on your wall, right? And so why wouldn't that be interesting for retail to fully understand? Interest, obviously, in space has peaked generally. I mean, Artemis, Elon Musk, XAI, it's constantly in the forefront. So, but this again is incredibly recent. This is this year. We had to focus on the new generation. They are investing now. I wanted to be on the forefront of, even if it's just, a toe in the door with these platforms, I wanted to get ahead because this is the future, right? We're not investing in launch, we're investing in technology that is for national security, for food security, for climate change, for sustainability. And when they understand that, it's like, wow.
It suddenly opens up their eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah, it suddenly opens up like, okay, this is more than just a load of rich people trying to get to the moon and escape Earth. We're not trying to do that. We're investing in companies that are saving Earth.
Leah, thank you for joining us today on The Growth Engine. Just to get us started, you've been at Seraphim for about 5 years now, is that right?
Correct, yeah. 5 years in December, I think.
The country, the globe's kind of caught up now, but 5 years ago, no one was there. Well, we hadn't really, I don't think Musk had even done his kind of launch of his Tesla into space or anything at that point then, had he? So it was very, very early days. Yeah,
very early days. And I think that's what's completely changed the game. Like the 100 times, cost in reduction of getting into space. The fact that, satellites used to be the size of buses. Now they're the size of your mobile phone, for example.
Yeah.
So all this, the economics of getting into space has drastically changed within these 5 years that I've been doing this. And so that's been the messaging from then to now that, what we're doing, why we are able to do this now successfully, why these companies are able to, build these products and deliver, data products, for example, to Earth, how they're able to get into space when, 6-7 years ago, it was completely impossible.
Yeah. Content must have been on that list at some point. What was in...
Yeah, so...
How do you approach the content from a strategy point of view?
So from the content perspective, so when I came to the business, there wasn't anyone writing blogs, writing white papers, for example, at the time, the people just didn't have the time, incredibly small team. And so then I had the idea of, and obviously I didn't feel qualified at that point. I think now I feel qualified to understand, the industry and who I'm talking to and understand the products. But I think then obviously I was new and I didn't. So it's kind of how can we get content easily and how am I able to do that? How am I able to, help was by starting the podcast because I suggested, I had worked with ghostwriters and things like that before, but I think as we discussed earlier, it's so niche that I think that it just wasn't even an option. And a lot of people, founders, CEOs don't like ghostwriters because they don't feel like it's their own voice, that kind of thing. So people either love it or they hate it. Yeah. So I think for me, it felt like an easy win to start the podcast where I was interviewing. It's also a great learning curve for myself to hear straight from the horse's mouth, interviewing the partners, interviewing the CEOs and the founders. And then, I'm able to get audio content, video content, and also kind of download it into digital content for the website, which can then obviously help improve SEO. So I think that just felt like a no-brainer to start the podcast to help for my own learning and be just an easy win to draw all that information out of these people who are the experts.
And the people that you're getting on the podcast as well, they're keen for the exposure because the industry's so new and wanting to get out there. And so presumably you had a small army of people queuing around the corner to come on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. People were loving it. The CEOs all wanted to be part of it. They were happy to help. And obviously from a marketing perspective, if they were happy to share it as well, which helps outreach on their behalf. They were just. I don't have a problem getting anyone on the podcast. And the format of the podcast, I try to keep it evergreen. So the questions I ask are very similar. I kind of tweak them, obviously, depending on maybe the stage of the business or who I'm interviewing. But generally, the format of the questions is quite the same, where I ask them to, talk about who they are, their journey, their product, their market size, where they're going, that kind of thing. And then so that the flow will be the same. And so I feel like that, that content is incredibly interesting for people to understand, because these companies are incredibly complex businesses.
But once you've also got that format, I mean, I'm a big fan of formats, because it's once people are comfortable with the format, then they like an episode, and then they know what to expect for the next one. Keeps people coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm actually now at the stage where the companies have evolved so much that I'm kind of doing them again. So and also I think I'm better than I was when I did them 5 years ago.
Learn more in the subject of you, and it's and such forth. So
yeah.
Okay, so podcast was a big winner, but I know that you've also really leaned into Instagram as well. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I mean, Space obviously being so visual, and it's interesting actually, because at the beginning, again 5 years ago, obviously Space is visual, but we didn't have native imagery. Like now, we actually have native imagery from the businesses, which is fantastic. So it seemed like for me a no-brainer to take this imagery and create assets from the podcast as well, overlaying imagery with the podcast. At that point, the podcast was only audio. And yeah, it felt like a really good fit, because I think that no one else seemed to be really doing it. I think, obviously LinkedIn is still a huge platform, and it is still our largest platform. But Instagram, and it was a bit of a slow burner, but it would definitely seeing growth. But that came from kind of doing targeted ads via Instagram.
So that's how you started how you almost got the kindling.
That's how we revved it up. Yeah. So I just started Instagram, just kind of posting it organically, or organic reach. And even at the beginning, there wasn't many of our portfolio companies kind of on Instagram either. And I guess the question would be kind of, who was I trying to reach out to? What was the market there? And that initially it was retail investors.
Yeah.
More than for SSIT, for Seraphim Space Investment Trust, rather than for the venture fund. So that was the strategy. So that's when the focus was more aligned with the investment trust.
Okay.
Thinking that retail investors are going to find this incredibly interesting. And obviously from a regulation perspective, when marketing to retail investors, it has to be incredibly careful. It has to be educational. It has to be, we have to explain the story of Space, explain what these companies are doing, and then let them join the dots,
Yeah.
And so by having this platform where we're showing how easy it is to access space visually, you've got this satellite imagery of rivers and lakes, and it's absolutely stunning imagery. You would have it on your wall, right? And so why wouldn't that be interesting for retail to fully understand? I'm
slightly grinning because I'm thinking back to you saying that you were a bit of a science fiction nerd and stuff. This sounds like to be your perfect job. You're creating all these beautiful marketing assets of stunning space visuals. It sounds fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's fascinating. And it's just more available now, than even 5 years ago. And I'm constantly emailing the companies like, can you send me anything you've got? Like, send me any, because, and you'll.
And they're receptive to that?
Yeah, they love it. Yeah. And this all started from putting together from the SSIT annual reports that want to have as much native imagery in the reports where possible, rather than using stock imagery, because, that just shows our network and shows the breadth of who we are, and our kind of pull within the industry, where we have access to this native imagery, where I'm not just finding a random stock picture of a satellite on iStock.
And you're one of the most, if not the most distinctive trust in the sector, arguably, because you have all of this fabulous access to all the resource. So why not make the most of it?
100%.
One question I have is that from what you just said, is that you said yes, LinkedIn, yes, Instagram, but LinkedIn is your largest channel. So can you talk about your different channels and which audience types and what's the strategy for each channel?
We try to be over most things. So LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and TikTok, which TikTok hasn't really taken off yet. But the strategy, LinkedIn is mainly obviously more B2B. So that is aligned more with the venture fund and more use that kind of, I wanted that to be a hub for news. I wanted people to come to Seraphim to help grow our brand about if they want to know, not just about the portfolio, but if they want to know about space news, anything that's going on within the industry, they'll come to us to be kind of the voice of that. I kind of use that to, I'm posting kind of like weekly news updates, which the top stories within the sector, as well as the top stories that within our portfolio. So the strategy of LinkedIn is, I don't do anything paid on LinkedIn. It's all organic, but I think we have now 30,000 followers, and that's all organically grown.
Fabulous. And that's obviously over 5 years. Yeah. That's road to scale. So TikTok.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just because you're busy getting the other channels spun up, or do you think that the audience is just not quite right there? I would have thought TikTok would have been a natural fit. If you've had success on Instagram, I would have thought you would do on TikTok.
Yeah, agreed. I think I probably haven't put as much time into that. So basically I take the podcasts, I use a company and they take make 4 or 5 assets from each podcast episode, and they put visuals behind it to make it, they put like quotes out, for example, and they put visuals, and they take, the face of the person who's speaking, and so they're quite fast. They're quite, appealing to younger generations. And so that started with putting these on Instagram and TikTok. And I just think that perhaps you need to go viral on TikTok.
Just to get it kicked off.
Yeah, to get it kicked off. I mean, we get a lot of views, but they don't convert to followers.
Right.
And so that's something that I need to explore and
then let's contrast that then with Instagram, where it sounds like you get a lot of views, but they do convert to followers. So what have been your learnings that you've sort of found? Because that's, views is obviously great, but really you want to build that audience. And
I think it's being constant. It's a lot of work, but constantly, posting daily, posting more than once a day. And again, when I started up the Meta ads, kind of driving people, obviously you have the option of, where are you driving these people when they're seeing your ad, and driving them towards being a follower, or driving them to, on the other hand, the journey was driving people to download a one-pager about educating them how to invest into space. So obviously with these platforms, you put some money behind it, you get a little bit more traction.
Yeah.
But I think it's worthwhile. I think, and if you have something to present, to show that's interesting, I think, you don't have to start big. I think we're doing about $1,000 a month. And I think,
was that now or then?
A bit more now. But
that to get everything going.
Yeah.
That was the sort of budget just to start the traction happening. Yeah. So that's interesting. So you were sort of a dual approach, majority of the time going after followers, but on occasion optimizing to gain downloads, and then that would be essentially a bit of detail about how you could go about investing. So that's quite a high intent signal if you get people to download. Presumably you're tracking all of those outputs. Is that a strategy you still do now?
Still run that strategy now. Yeah. And again, it's difficult because it has to be seen as educational. So on the one pager, it's then caveated with, you then go to your normal investment provider, whether that be AJ Bell, Hargreaves, you, and then that's up to you. So then from a marketing perspective, we are losing people there in the journey. So
it's the most frustrating thing about investment trust marketing, isn't it? You can't track you don't have a basket that you can track.
But I could see kind of these platforms that I was driving people to, the retail platforms, moving up the shareholder list. Yeah. So I could then attribute that to my work, what I did. And
that's how everyone does it.
Yeah,
it's an imperfect thing, but you need to get your data from somewhere, don't you? So.
Yeah, 100%. And we were seeing, and now we're seeing more of the retail platforms, than ever. For example, I think AJ Bell, they weren't even very high up in the shareholder chain, and now they're top 10. So
how's that growth again? Is that accelerated over a couple of years, or is that accelerated because you've engaged that retail audience? What
interest, obviously, in the space has peaked generally. I mean, Artemis, Elon Musk, XAI, it's constantly in the forefront. So, but this again is incredibly recent. This is this year.
Yes.
So, I mean, people have always been interested and wondered by space, but I think that's, it's just been ramped up lately, especially in the media. So, I mean, very lucky those early adopters, who got into the investment trust when we started this, because they've seen, the share price rocket, since then.
You built this infrastructure to access retail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's been in the press, and I know that you've been super busy the last couple of days, is that you've just recently gone through another fundraise with Seraphim, raising 137 million. Now, congratulations, firstly. You must be exhausted.
Yeah.
From our perspective of putting on a podcast for other marketers working investment trust, there obviously hasn't been a lot of fundraising going on over the last few years. So you're sort of in a unique position. And I'm interested from a marketing perspective, what does that runway look like of stuff that needs to be done?
Yeah, I think I'd always believed that retail investors were important, and I think I'm not saying that others hadn't, but in the last 10 years, the last decade, the bigger checks, the earlier checks were all coming from institutional investors,
of course,
and that was moving the needle. And I think I've always been interested in investing myself. I know a lot of my friends are. We had to focus on kind of the new generation, the new generation of people. And investing is a lot easier now for people, than it was. We have all the modern platforms, trading 212, for example, you can do it on your mobile phone. So my strategy from the very beginning, and hence using, my foray into things like Instagram targeting, TikTok, is trying to, spread awareness on these platforms. And I think especially, not a lot of people in finance are doing, especially not in investment trust, people are not doing it.
Yeah.
So building that, infrastructure up from the beginning, was just having that there prior to the fundraise just made, when we pushed go on the fundraise, we already had that there, and we already had, it was easy for me to kind of tweak an ad to link back to the fundraise, for example. We already had the audience kind of ready.
Got a direct route into them.
We had a direct route into them. And as I said, like targeting younger investors, younger people are, millennials, Gen Z, that they are investing now as much as, as older generation. So I wanted to be on the forefront of, even if it's just, a toe in the door with these platforms, I wanted to get ahead, because this is the future, right?
Yeah.
This is.
So 137 million raised. Did the retail amount of that come to fruition? So I guess what I want to know is all of that hard work with developing the channels, and when the IPO happened, has a solid percentage of that come from retail?
Yeah, we raised 45 million from retail, which is incredible. It's the biggest retail raise in the UK in the last 5 years. I think the only bigger was Deliveroo, which was in 2001.
That's astonishing.
2021, sorry.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so absolutely incredible. Yeah, so and I had a feeling that it would be popular for retail, but we, I think it was over 7,000 retail investors got on board, and it's just, a fantastic opportunity for retail to be able to buy, at £1 when the share price is now currently, on and off. I think we hit 250 the other day, which is a milestone. So it's wonderful to see. Yeah, that we were right. That I was right. That this was at times when institutional investors were a bit iffy about it and didn't quite believe the story. Retail were always willing to put money in and willing to to believe the story and trust in the business. they proved it now,
As you're saying, that's an extraordinary opportunity for those investors coming in at such a price when it's trading at such a premium at the moment.
Yeah, and it's just being noticed. We've had great relationship with journalists as well, and it's been noticed by the press, and it was commented on in Citywire today by one of the journalists that actually, interestingly, he said he didn't like our font. He said, I don't like their wacky space font, but he said, but he knows about it, right? So that's fair.
Distinctive.
It's distinctive.
Memorable.
I'll let him off for saying that. But he said, but I've seen them everywhere. He said, that, and he also commented on our CEO, Mark. He said, he's everywhere. They're always running Instagram campaigns. I've seen Mark on videos. We've seen him at conferences. It's a multi-facet strategy, and I think we do try to be at all the credible places that that we should be, and we try to get our message out everywhere that we know that the right people can see it. And I think it's really been, the story is so wonderful when the light bulb moment is for people, when they understand the story about why we're doing it, the low-cost launch, what the technology is doing for the Earth. We're not investing in launch, we're investing in technology that is, for national security, for food security, for climate change, for sustainability. And when they understand that, it's like, wow.
It suddenly opens up their eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah, it suddenly opens up like, okay, this is more than just a load of rich people trying to get to the moon and escape Earth. We're not trying to do that. We're investing in companies that are saving Earth, And so that message is so powerful, and telling that story from my perspective on all these different platforms is what's been the winning story.
Yeah, incredible. So what's next from a marketing perspective? You told us about channels of workings, but bit more looking into TikTok perhaps, but what else is on your radar?
I think what I'm interested in, and I'm not an expert on this in the slightest at the moment, but is LLMs, and I want to, obviously people are now searching in ChatGPT, and people are searching in, Claude, like, how do I invest in, I want to understand how to maximize that as a search for Seraphim. And what I do understand is that I feel like things that we were looking at in the past are not the right things now. For example, I'm not saying, we don't want to be in the FT or we don't want to be in Bloomberg, but they, in my opinion, have perceived as a bit of a vanity measure where we're just like, it's wonderful obviously to be in the FT, but it's behind a paywall. How do these LLMs scrape data? They use the trades, they use websites, they use Reddit chats, they use Reddit forums. So things are really pivoting in that direction. So maybe, we don't, obviously I want money, I don't take that back, but we don't, we can do things. And I've always done things on a bit of a shoestring, I've always been able to maximize content, get as much out of it as possible using similar content on different platforms. But I feel like focus on that low hanging fruit, focus on doing an AMA on Reddit, focus on getting in a trade magazine, that kind of thing, because that is the future of search, and that is where people are looking. And if you're you're utilizing these platforms, you will, grow your brand. Yeah.
We did. I did a research interviews for another trust. I think I had to do 10 qualitative interviews, and every single interview I did, when I was asking them about their investor journey, tools that they use at different stages of the journey, every single one of them talked about AI search as part of that investment journey. Every single one.
100%.
If I'd done those same interviews 12 months ago, you're lucky to have had one person say it.
Exactly.
It's incredible that how much it's changed.
Yeah, and exactly. That's why I'm not an expert on it, but I really want to learn more about that. And I think that's where I'm going to be focusing my energy. And also, I didn't quite get this off the market in time before the fundraiser, but kind of influencers as well, financial or influencers as they're called.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. But there is also something that I was reading about kind of optimizing influencer content for LLM. So there is a way that, you can whatever you're pushing on social media, whatever these people are saying, whatever and the chats, then that all is going to make a huge difference to AI search.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing, I really want to focus on, if possible, from a budget perspective, using influencers to reach out to retail investors, because again, that is a trusted source of, and I think it is all about, especially in financial services, all about trust and transparency.
Yes.
And hopefully, retail investors realize that, we are we are regulated, and we wouldn't be using someone that wouldn't be, a safe pair of hands, and wouldn't be kind of, explaining exactly how things need to be said. So I think using someone who's trusted, people are more likely to go to that person, because it's also, it's not someone who is, someone who's had a column in the Times for the last 50 years. It's someone who, is trying to make money by talking to real people. And I think it's because, as I said, because I think
an authenticity in that.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. I think it's authentic, and it's a changing world where everyone can invest now, whether you know about it or understand it at all, you can. And so these are the more likely where people are looking for advice, rather than going to, a column in the FT.
Just come up with another question listening to you then, and it relates to something you mentioned before about how you're tracking the share platforms on the share register. But you also mentioned that you're specifically targeting going after a young investor. Now, majority of investment trusts, and I won't name the company, but the research company does a lot of investigation into investment trust audiences, still getting that the average investment trust holder is about 65 years old, male, probably living in Southeast.
Sorry.
And I think there's a general awareness that actually that may be true, but from a monetary point of view. But when you speak to platforms like AJ Bell, they'll tell you that actually they're starting to see much more growth coming through, sort of late 40s, and that sweet spot really, I think, which is sort of 45s to 55s, seems to me about the next level of investment trust investor. But there's obviously a much younger cohort that are really interested in investing, where you've got huge numbers and also a long path in front of them to invest. Now, those, as I understand, are the platforms of like Trading 212 and stuff like that. Are they starting to show up on the share register for you?
Yeah.
And is that so they are? That's 100%. I guess that was the crux.
That's incredibly recent. Yeah. I think that's within the last 6 months. Yeah.
So your strategy is encompassing both those existing investment trust investors, but also you're starting you've almost got quite a short-term, long-term marketing strategy happening.
Yeah. Because we're not, I haven't forgotten about the current investors or, the older investors. And there's a huge PR strategy as well, where, we're always trying to be in the press, in the media, so we are still you try to get in, in Bloomberg, in Reuters,
you're going up traditional channels as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a multifaceted strategy where we're still doing everything traditionally, but kind of the social engagement, the platform engagement is something on top, something new. Yeah. And I think that is future proofing, and obviously it just made sense being space, being super interesting, being something that a younger generation are probably less risk adverse to, because they've grown, up around it. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to start wrapping us up, if that's okay. And I'm intrigued to when you look back on your time coming in to Seraphim, and you're thinking about, okay, if there was one golden sort of nugget that you'd pass on to other marketers that are sort of perhaps coming into a role when they feel quite daunted. They've got all of this list as long as your arm to do list. What would be your advice to those folk?
I think I'm lucky where I've had a lot of autonomy in my role, and I've been trusted to try things, and if things haven't worked within a reasonable budget. And I think, I said this to you before, but I think it's PR, it's not ER. I think it's good. You can try things, and if they don't work, no one's going to die, I think have the sense to, and the creativity to come up with new ideas and come up with new outreach, and try different platforms and see what works for you, test things out. And if they don't work, can them do something different. Keep the traditional things going, as we said, but there's always space to try new things, and don't be afraid.
Thank you, Leah, for taking time to come in. Before I let you go, there's one other thing. We ask our guests if they'd like to leave something behind, a memento, which is almost reflective of your journey at Seraphim so far. Is there anything you'd like to contribute to the bookcase?
I'd love to, and a book, so it does fit. So this is Reach for Tomorrow by Arthur C. Clarke. Super. And it's a compilation of different space stories. And I think what's good about it is many space stories are very kind of dystopian and dark. And I think this is for how long ago it was written, it's very positive, and it talks about what space can bring, and how exciting the future can be. And I think for any space enthusiasts, it's a must read.
Or any budding space investors as well.
Well, definitely, yeah.
Oh, that's superb! Thank you so much. I'll look forward to putting it on the bookcase, but more importantly, look forward to reading it as well.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Leah, for joining us. Thank you for listening today to The Growth Engine. If you enjoyed this episode and like to hear more, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, and follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates or on hubagency.co.uk. Thank you, and see you next time.